So this is going to be circle day 3. And there's a lot of information on this day, so make sure you guys are taking notes. So we are going to write the equation of a circle given the ends of the diameter. So as we all know, a diameter in a circle is a line that goes from one side of the circle to the other and passes through the center of the circle. It has to pass directly through the center of the circle. So we're going to start by figuring out how to find the center of the circle. Well, according to the diameter, we know that this side is equal to this side. So to find the center, we are going to have to use the midpoint formula. So for the center, we use midpoint formula. And as you may remember, the midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 all over 2, and y1 plus y2 all over 2. That is how you find the center of your circle given the diameter. Now the radius is going to be a little bit different. To find the radius, we are going to use the distance formula. Using the center and another point, or one of the ends of the diameter. Either one will work. So we're going to look at a few examples of figuring out or writing the equation of a circle given the ends of the diameter. We're going to start by finding the center, then we're going to find the radius. So our first example, I'm going to write on this paper. If you guys need paper, let me know. I do have the worksheet up to where I'm getting these questions from if you guys need that as well. I just know this takes a little bit of paper in order to answer, so I didn't want to make you guys figure that out. So let's look at number 11 on your notes worksheet. The ends of the diameter are 7, -6, and -5, 14. Also, I forgot to write the distance formula. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Be careful on these squares. Be careful on the squares, okay? So here's our 2 points. We're going to start by finding the center. Let's find the center first. We're going to use the midpoint formula, where x1, 7. Sorry, y1, and this is x2, y2. Plus y2, which is, or x2, sorry, -1, all over 2. And our y1 plus y2, all over 2. Well, 7 plus -5 is the same as 7 minus 5, or -2. -6 plus 14 is going to be +8. -2 over 2 is -1. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. This is our center. We still need to find the radius in order to write our equation. So to find the radius, we are going to use our center and one of the other 2 points, it does not matter which one, to find our radius. So let's start, I'm going to use this point because it looks smaller, a little bit easier to work with. So we're going to use the distance formula for our radius. The center is going to be x1 and y1, and the other point is going to be x2, y2. Okay, so we're going to plug this in. We're going to do x2, or 7, minus x1, or -1, plus y2, which is -6, minus y1, or 4. If you subtract a negative, that's the same thing as adding a positive, so that's going to be 7 plus 1, which is going to be 8. Hold on. Yeah. Yeah. Be 8 squared plus 10 squared. I got that backwards. That's a positive 1, guys. That's a positive 1. I got a little confused. So this should be 6 squared, and that should be 10 squared. So if you guys want to fix that on your paper, that should be a positive 1, and it's going to be 7 minus 1. 7 minus 1 is 6. 6 squared is 36. And 10 squared is 100. 36 plus 100 is going to be the square root of 136. You can simplify that. I think it is easier to keep it in this term for right now. It can simplify. I'm just not going to simplify it at this moment. So now that we have the radius and we have the center, we can plug those into our last formula. Our formula was x minus h squared plus quantity of y minus k quantity squared equals the radius squared. H and k came from our center. So h is the x value and k was the y value. We're going to do x minus 1 quantity squared plus y minus 4 quantity squared with our radius, or the square root of 36 squared. Well, if you square the square root of 136, anytime you square a square root, it is just the number on the inside. So that is going to be our answer. Let's do another example. Hopefully I can do basic algebra for this one. So again, the ends of the diameter, we're going to look at -5, 9, and -15, -1. The first thing we need to do is find the center. To find the center, we are going to use our midpoint formula. Our x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. x1 is going to be the first value of our first point. Y1 is going to be the y value of our first point. x2 and y2 are the x and y values of our second point. We're going to plug those into our formula. x1 is -5 plus -15 all over 2. And y1 is 9 plus y2, or -1, all over 2. Well, 9 plus -1 is going to be 8. And -5 plus -15 is -20. -20 over 2 is -10. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. This is our center. Now we still have to find the radius. Remember, we use the center in order to find the radius. So this is going to be my x1 and my y1. And then I'm going to choose either of these points. It doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to choose the first one because, again, the numbers are a little bit smaller. So I'm going to use -5 and 9 for x2 and y2. The radius formula is the distance formula, or x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared, all under the square root. I'm going to plug each of these numbers in. x2 is -5. x1 is -10. y2 is 9. y1 is 4. -5 minus -10, that's the same thing as adding a positive, so -5 plus 10 is going to be +5. Don't forget to keep the square. 9 minus 4 is 5. 5 squared is 25, plus 25. The square root of 25 plus 25 is the square root of 50. Again, you can simplify this. I'm not going to. I think it's easier what we're going to do in a minute, because this is our radius. We're going to plug it into our formula for x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. H and k come from our center, so if our center is -10, 4, this is h. This is k. We're going to do x minus negative 10. That's the same thing as adding 10. And y minus 4. The square, or r squared, well, we know r is the square root of 50. And if we square a square root, it's just going to be the number on the inside, or 50. So r squared is just going to be 50. Okay. Now we have two more like this one before we get into tangents, and I'm running out of paper. Okay, so let's look at the next one. We're going to use negative 11 and negative 11 and negative 9 and negative 19. Again, these are the ends of the diameter. So we're going to plug these in to find our center. The center formula is the midpoint, or x1 plus x2 over 2, and y1 plus y2 over 2. That is going to be our center point. Our x1 and y1 come from the x and y values of our first point, and the x2 and the y2 come from the x and y values of our second point. We're going to start with x1, which is negative 11, plus negative 9, all over 2, and y1, which is negative 11, plus negative 19, all over 2. Negative 11 plus negative 9 is going to be negative 20. Negative 11 plus negative 19 is negative 30. Negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. And negative 30 divided by negative 2 is negative 15. This is our center, or h and k. Now we need to find the radius. To find the radius, we are going to use the distance formula. The radius is going to equal the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. So we're going to have to do the exact same thing again. We're going to figure out which point we're going to use. Again, this point looks easier, so I'm going to choose that one. And the center. My center, I'm going to write these points out over here. Negative 10, negative 15. That'll be x1 and y1. And negative 11, negative 11. That'll be x2 and y2. We're going to plug these in. My x2 is negative 11, so I'm going to plug that in. Negative 11 minus negative 10 squared plus negative 11 minus negative 15 squared. Negative 11 minus negative 10. Remember, if we subtract a negative, that's the same thing as adding a positive. So negative 11 plus 10 is going to be negative 1. Be careful with this one. It's all in parentheses. And then negative 11 minus negative 15. Again, if we subtract a negative, that's the same thing as adding a positive. Negative 11 plus 15 is 4. Negative 1 squared is 1. 4 squared is 16. 1 plus 16 is 17. Our radius is the square root of 17. We know what the radius is. We know what our center is. We just need to plug it into our formula. So we're going to do x minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared, equals r squared. Well, if r is equal to the square root of 17, r squared is just the number inside our square root, or positive 17. We're going to plug these in, and don't forget it's negative 10, negative 15 for h and k. X minus 10, plus 10 because it's a negative. Change the sign when they go in. Y plus 15 is equal to 17. This is our answer. So now there is one other thing we need to talk about. It's a little bit easier than finding the two endpoints of the diameter. Again, the diameter ones are pretty important, so make sure you write down these formulas. Again, for the radius, it's the distance formula. For the center, it's the midpoint formula. Again, the radius is the distance, midpoint is the center. Now we're going to talk about tangent lines. Lines and the center. Now these ones are a little bit easier. Remember, tangent lines are lines that lie on the edge of the circle and they only cross at one point. Kind of like this. They only cross at one point, or it could be kind of like this. Cross at that point. Now, for today's purposes, we're only going to have x equals and y equals. If the tangent is x equals a number, only look at the x values. If the tangent, I wrote the twice, tangent is y equals, only look at the y value to find the radius. That's what we're going to look at today. So I'm going to give you guys an example. So our first example, we're going to look at the center being 8, 1, and the tangent is a tangent to x equals -1. It's tangent to x equals -1. Now, if x equals -1, that is an x equals, so we're only going to be looking at our x value of our point. For this one, we're going to do 8 minus the x term of our tangent. 8 minus -1. And that's going to be our radius. Now, whenever you do this subtraction, make sure the radius is going to be a positive number, because it's only showing the distance from the center. So if you get like -9, the radius is actually going to be +9. Or if you get like -20, the radius is actually going to be +20 because it's only showing distance, not relation. Okay? So for this one, 8 minus -1. Well, if we subtract a negative, again, that's the same as adding a positive, so 8 plus 1 is 9. That is our radius. We know what the center is, we know what our radius is. We just need to plug it into our formula. X minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared, equals r squared, h and k being our x and y values of the center. We're going to do x minus 8 squared plus y minus 1, quantity squared, equals 9 squared. Well, we know 9 squared is 81, so we're going to plug it in for 81. Okay, that is the formula for that one, or the equation for this circle. We have a few more to look at, and then we are done for today. So let's look at number 17 on your note sheet. Again, if you don't have the note sheet, that's fine. Just make sure you write down the points. Center 1, -4. And tangent to y equals -12. So for this one, we have y values. Because we have y values, we're only going to focus on the y. If this is y equals, you look at the y's. If it's x equals, you look at the x's. So for this one, we're going to take our y value, or -4, minus the y value of our tangent. And that will be our radius. Again, make sure it is a positive number. If you get a negative number, change it to a positive number. That's all you got to do. If it's -9, it'll be +9. So -4 minus -12, Remember, if we subtract a negative, that's the same thing as adding a positive. So negative 4 plus 12 is going to be a positive 8. So the radius is 8 units. We're going to plug that into our formula. Again, this is our h and k from before. So we're going to do x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals radius squared. If our radius is 8, then r squared is 8 squared, or 64. Our h is 1, so we're going to do x minus 1. And our k is negative 4, so we're going to do y plus 4 because we are subtracting a negative. And r squared is 64. That is our formula. We're going to do 2 more of these. We're going to look at the center is negative 4, negative 3. And it is tangent to x equals negative 14. Again, we have an x value, so we're going to have to focus on the x values of our circle, or of our center. So if this is negative 14, we're going to do the x value first, negative 4, minus the tangent line's value, or negative 14. Negative 4 minus negative 14 is the same thing as negative 4 plus 14, or 10. That is our radius. We have our center, we have our radius. The radius squared, which we're going to use in a minute, is 10 squared, or 100. We're going to use all of this in our formula. The formula is up here. I'm not going to rewrite it for this one. So we're going to do x minus negative 4, or plus 4. Always change the sign. And y plus 3, because we subtract a negative, is equal to 100. And this is the equation of our circle. We have one more example, and then we will be through for today. The center is going to be negative 3, 7. The tangent, x equals 3. So again, we have an x value, so we're only going to be looking at the x numbers. We're going to take our center point, or negative 3, subtract our x value of our tangent line, which is, 3. And then we're going to make whatever this number is positive. So negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. So we're going to make that a positive 6 because it's only showing distance. So it's going to be the absolute value. I guess we could just write the absolute value, positive 6. So it is going to be a positive 6 because it's 6 units over. We are going to plug this into our formula. X minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared equals r squared. Our r is equal to 6. If we square that, 6 times 6 is 36. Okay? So x minus h. Well, our h is already negative, so we're going to change the sign. And y minus k, which is 7. And our radius is squared is 36. And that is our last equation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to message me on Schoology.